Good morning. So we are in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Gimel. We're in the Layomim of Purim, the second one. The Mamar Al Kein Karu Layomim Hoeileh Purim. So the Rebbe is explaining here that Haman, in order to achieve his evil scheme, his objective of destroying the Jewish people, Rahman al-Islam, wanted to rise to a level of godliness which is beyond Ishtalshalus. And that is connected also to the name Achashverosh, which represents a level of godliness which is beyond Ishtalshalus, because Achashverosh is Achris Vereshis Shaloi. The beginning and the end is his, meaning to say that what? That it's a level which is beyond the beginning and end, beyond Ishtalshalus. And it goes along also with the other interpretation of Achashverosh, that Achashverosh is Hushchuru Pneim Shel Yisrael B'Yomov, that the face of the Jewish people were darkened in his times. Why? Because this high level, when it comes down through tremendous tzimtzumim, contractions, ends up in a mode of what? Of Hushchuru Pneim. That's what the Rebbe explained involved. Now, the Rebbe points out in Zion that we find that that wasn't enough for Haman. Haman not only wanted to rise up to where? To the level of Achashverosh, beyond Ishtalshalus, right? Where the beginning and the end is his, meaning to say that the beginning and the end are equally insignificant. But he wanted to even go beyond that to Geirel. That's the point that Rebbe makes in Zion. And the question is why? It says that Rebbe in Zion, page Kuf Yudalid, in Teres Menachem, the Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Gimel. Page Kuf Yudalid. One can say the Atam al Zeh Haman Hipel Purim with Delagila B'chinas Agero Shalom Alam Ishtalshalus. The reason why Haman drew lots in order to reach a level of Geirel, which is beyond Ishtalshalus. Af she'oz b'mei Achashverosh gam kedim Shipel Purim hoisa hahan hogim etzad l'maylam Ishtalshalus. Even though that then, when then, in the time of Achashverosh, even before he drew the lots, the conduct of Hashem was in a manner which is beyond the Ishtalshalus. So why was it necessary to go to a level of what? Of Geirel? Why did he have to draw lots? Which seems to imply that he was trying to tap into a level which is even beyond the prevailing level, which was already beyond the Ishtalshalus. Why wasn't it enough for him that from the prevailing level his scheme should be manifest, should be implemented? He says, because the level of Geirel, of lots, represents a level of godliness beyond Ishtalshalus, which is even beyond the level of Achashverosh, Misha Achris Vereshis Shalei, even beyond the prevailing level of beyond Ishtalshalus, where the beginning and end is equally significant relative to that level of godliness. Geirel represents a level which is even beyond that. Why was that necessary? And in what way, how can we see that Geirel is even beyond that? Because from this alone, from the fact that he is called Achashverosh, meaning to say that you say that the beginning and end is equally insignificant, it means to say, Muchach, this proves that even relative to that level, the ideas, the phenomena of time, as it were, the beginning and end exists. But they are equal relative to that level. If time is totally irrelevant in that level, then you can't even relate to time at all, even in a manner of the beginning and end being equal, right? The fact that you allude to time, to Achris Vereshis, to say there's Ishtalshalus, means to say that it has some significance so far as that level is concerned, but they're equal. Right? Where do the brackets end? Page Kuf Tesvav in the middle. The line starts Ubegili. Let's just jump over for a second. But when we talk about this, is not the case when we talk about the level of Geirel. The whole concept of beginning and end doesn't come into the frame at all. כמובן מזה שהגויל הוא בכלל בשני דברים שווים כנ"ל סעיף בייס.
Other page, Kevin. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
Just as it's understood from the fact that the goydel generally is when you have two equal things, as mentioned before in chapter 2 in Sif Beis. Meaning to say, when two things are equal, so in our case it would mean achris v'reishis, right? Achris v'reishis are not equal. There's achris and there's reishis. So far as the level of Achashverosh is concerned, achris v'reishis have some significance. It's just that they're equal. They're equally meaningless, so to speak, right? But insofar as Goydel is concerned, there is no achris and v'reishis to begin with. They're insignificant and they're unimportant. They're equally unimportant to begin with. It's not that he rises beyond it. To clarify this a bit further, you know, in Chassidus there's a concept based on a pasuk in Mishlei. The pasuk in Mishlei says, "Smamis biyadayin tesapis v'hi behechlei melech," that a spider crawls with its hands on the walls or in the palace of the king, and the king doesn't pay particular attention to it. He doesn't really care. Why? So Chassidus explains that in the deeper sense this means smamis is the idea of klippus, right? Biyadayim tesapis, it crawls in the palace of the king, and the king doesn't mind. Meaning to say that klippus is meaningless to Hashem, to that level. When we talk about that level of godliness, where Hashem is so exalted and so beyond Ishtalshalus, that even klippa is meaningless. So it can climb in the palace of the king, and the king is not bothered. Right? Now, so far as that level is concerned, what happens if, for example, or not so far as that level is concerned, if you talk about a spider, imagine a spider that suddenly becomes destructive. It doesn't just crawl and make spider webs. It starts destroying the palace. Right? The king will mind. So long as it's just crawling and going about its business, because of the greatness of the king, he doesn't mind. But if it becomes destructive, one would say it's possible that the king would mind. That is, in Nimshal, this would be in the moral, as it were, of the parable. This would be the idea of Achashverosh. So far as Achashverosh is concerned, Achris v'reishis shaloi, hushchuru p'deim shel Yisrael. The face of Eden became darkened. The spider is crawling in the palace of the king, right? Klippa can carry on and do its thing. But if it starts destroying that which is near and dear to the king, to go ahead and to Chatz Chalil destroy the Jewish people, the king will mind. That is so far as Achashverosh is concerned, the level of godliness, as he noted in Achashverosh, which is beyond the Ishtalshalus in a manner where there's Achris v'reishis, he's just beyond it. So far as Goydel is concerned, you go a step further, that even Chas v'Chalila destruction is also meaningless.
How does he get to these levels? I mean, what does it mean practically?
Well, in the practical sense, there's nothing practical about this, but in the deeper sense it means this. It's similar to the idea when it says concerning, I would say, I think it's something like along these lines. When Moshe Rabbeinu when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to go to Paroi, he performed the 10 makkos and so on and so forth, but then he had to go for the jugular, as it were, and finish it once and for all. So he had to confront Paroi face to face and essentially. At an essential level. So the Zohar says that when Moshe Rabbeinu was given this mission, he was frightened. And that's why in Parshas Boy it says, Hashem says to Moshe, Boy el Paroi. Boy means come to Paroi. Really, the Zohar says, it should have said Lech el Paroi. If the instructions were that he should go to Paroi, he sent him on a mission, the expression is go, it doesn't say come. Come denotes that Hashem went along with him. And the Zohar says, in fact, that's what happened. Hashem said, come along, I'm going with you. Why? Because Moshe was frightened. Why? Because Paroi was beruchnius in the spiritual dimensions, in the spiritual realms. Everything in this world manifests itself from something spiritual. So it begins in the spiritual realm. And it manifests itself in the physical realm. Paroi was a manifestation of a tremendously high level of klippa, a very powerful klippa. That one, so long as Moshe Rabbeinu just had to chip away at him, he was, he felt confident enough, as it were, that he can handle it, so to speak. But when it came to dealing with Paroi once and for all at a fundamental level, Moshe Rabbeinu was frightened because he represented an unbelievably powerful klipa. So Hashem said, Bayal Pari, come along with me, and I will be there with you, and in that way you'll be able to confront him at that level and be successful. Similarly, when we talk about all these, so to speak, characters, Haman, for example, if you look at the level that he achieved in the physical sense, where the entire populated world at the time, practically speaking, Achashverosh was a Meshel Bekipa. He was a superpower. He ruled the entire world, basically. And Haman achieved the position of second in command, so to speak, the second most powerful man. That's a representation of something Beruchnis, which means to say, Haman, Beruchnis in the spiritual realms, was a tremendously powerful klippa. So what played itself out over here of Lahash Midlar Galabed, the scheme to annihilate, God forbid, the entire Jewish people, was because Beruchnis in the spiritual realms, Haman was tinkering, whatever klippa he was up there, he was tinkering with the most essential levels of Hashem and his relationship with the Jewish people. That's what it was. That was the. So the Rebbe is talking about Haman in the inner dimension, right? But getting back to the point that Rebbe is making over here, that even in beyond Hishtalshalus there are distinctions. In other words, in the way something is insignificant, in the manner in which Hishtalshalus is insignificant relative to a level of godliness which is beyond Hishtalshalus, godliness that's beyond Hishtalshalus, there are also levels. There are levels in the insignificance and in the meaninglessness. There's a lower level, which is also beyond Hishtalshalus, but over there, Achris Vereshis is equal so long as there's no destruction. Concealment, yes, but destruction, that's a whole different story. Kum zu gain vos. Geirol, that's beyond even Achashverosh, that even within levels of godliness, which are beyond Hishtalshalus, so far as Geirol, the level of Geirol is concerned, Chas v'Chalila, there is potential for Hishtalshalus, for levels to be so meaningless that black and white is equal, darkness and light is equal. So therefore, from that point of view, in other words, equal, not because he's beyond it, because it's really equal. Not because this is the beginning and this is the end and I don't care. Beginning and end doesn't even come into it. It's so meaningless that there's no distinction between meaning and end from the perspective of that level. So Haman wanted to link in there, Chas v'Chalila, from there to bring about the demise of the Jewish people. Says the Rebbe, where do we see, going back to this level of Achris Vereshis, of Achashverosh, that there are distinctions, going back to the brackets on Kuf Yudalit, to point out from that which is written in the verse in Megillah Esther, that Achashverosh also Mishta made a party, for all his ministers and servants. And then the verse says, and also for whom, for all the entire nation, the population that was present in Shushan. Meaning to say that there were distinctions. There was Sorov, there was Avodov, and there was the So we see from this verse that there were distinctions. And the deeper sense also, the Alter Rebbe explains in the Torah, top of Kuf that the revelation that was present, going back to the metaphor, that Achashverosh actually represents what? Levels of godliness. So the Alter Rebbe explains that so far as the level of Achashverosh was concerned, the revelation that was manifest and present for the entire nation was at a lower level than the revelation that prevailed for all his ministers and servants. Meaning to say that despite the fact that Achashverosh represents a level of godliness which is beyond Hishtalshalus, nonetheless there are distinctions between, in that revelation, between those that are at a higher level and those that are at a lower level. And to add, says the Rebbe, that not only was there a distinction between Sorov and Avodov and Chol Ha'am, that the Chol Ha'am, the population, received less of a revelation, says the Rebbe, that even in the revelation that was revealed to the entire population, it wasn't equal to everybody of that status. On the contrary, says the Rebbe, there were differences in that as well. As the Gemara says in Megillah, right? Because it says the party took place Bachatzar Ginas Bison Hamelech, It took place in the courtyard of the orchard of the Bison of the king, right? So the Gemara says, "Haroy lechotzer lechotzer." Those of the population that were fit to be present in the chotzer, in the courtyard, were there. Haroy legina legina, haroy lebison lebison. So in other words, whoever was fit for a certain specific location within the palace of the king was situated there. In the deeper sense, that means that what? That so far as the revelation of Achashverosh is concerned, there are differences in how it becomes manifest in those that receive that revelation. Yesh leimar, says the Rebbe. The Rebbe makes a distinction like this. Why indeed? Why indeed, if it's a level which is beyond Ishtalshalus, why indeed are there differences in the for example, who that the different sections of the population, different levels of Ishtalshalus, so to speak, receive different different levels of revelation. So he says like this. It say that so far as this level is concerned, says the Rebbe, so far as the level of Achashverosh is concerned, then from the perspective of Ishtalshalus, in other words, meaning to where that revelation becomes revealed, it's meant only for whom, and it's directed towards Soriv Havodim, ministers and servants. So then why, how do the get the revelation? The fact that the revelation also became revealed for the entire population, meaning to say the lower levels, to the extent that it also was revealed to those that were only fit to be present only in the courtyard, meaning to say those that were at the lowest level. That is because the revelation was from the level of godliness known as Achashverosh, where the end and the beginning is his, meaning to say that the end and the beginning is equally insignificant, right? So therefore, because it's such a high level, it's revealed really in essence, it's directed to whom? Only to those in Seder Ishtalshalus that are at the level of Sarav Avodav, meaning to say a high level. How did it end up being revealed also to the population, to the lowest levels of Ishtalshalus that are what? That are only fit to be in the outer courtyard of the palace. Rebbe says like this. Why, if it's from such a level, I articulated the question not quite correctly, if it's from such a high level that the levels to which it is revealed are meaningless, then why were there differences? Why, when it came to the were there those that received less of a revelation? For example, those that were fit only in the courtyard. So he says like this, because there are two aspects to this revelation. There's the revelation as it is from the perspective of the godliness. Over there it's equal, right? But that doesn't change the fact that there are differences in realms. In Layomim there are still differences, right? There's higher levels and there's lower levels. The fact that godliness was revealed from a level that Ishtalshalus is equal, that from whose perspective is Ishtalshalus equal? From the perspective of the godliness, the revelation of godliness. But the realms, they didn't become beyond Ishtalshalus. From the point of view of Ishtalshalus, it's still Ishtalshalus. So therefore, those that are at a higher level received more of the revelation. Those that were at a lower level received less of the revelation. But not because of what? Not because the godliness was tailored for more revelation to the higher level and less revelation to the lower level, but rather because of the limitation of Ishtalshalus, because of the limitations of the levels. So therefore, those that were at a lower level, despite the fact that the revelation was from such a tremendously high madrega level, where it's b'shaveh, that's as far as he's concerned. The godliness is concerned. But as far as the Layomim, those that are at a lower level still retain that limited capacity, and therefore they receive less of a revelation. But going back to the main point that I was making is that Goyrol is a level that transcends Ishtalshalus even more than the level of Achashverosh transcends Ishtalshalus. So far as the level of Achashverosh, the way that transcends Ishtalshalus, it just means that it allows Klippa to continue to exist within the palace of the king, so to speak. but not to destroy. So therefore, Haman, who wanted to carry out a scheme of Chas Chalila annihilating the Jewish people, had to link it to a level where destruction would be possible. That he thought could be accomplished by rising up even to, and tapping into the energy of Goydel, where Achres Vereshis don't even come into the frame to begin with. And he thought that through that he'd be able to carry out his scheme. And the miracle was, of course, that even that didn't work. More about that in Mr. Shem tomorrow.